Okay, welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Well, Josh, all I got to say is here we go.
This is it. We're going to talk about Parasite, the new Bong Joon-ho film, and I think that Cannes got it right. I think this is the best movie of the year so far for me. I've been a huge Midsommar fan, but this thing, the first time I saw it, I was just like, I can't. I texted you right afterwards, and I said, one word Parasite review, taut. This movie is so tightly put together that it is impenetrable by any critique that I can come up with. So what did you think?
Well, podcast done, because I agree with you 100%. I mean, we literally could have a 5-minute podcast right now, where we both said the exact same thing and we'd be done. The only thing I would say is if you don't see this film, you are missing out on the most original, the most unique, the most mysterious, emotional, taut, suspense, thriller, class study. What is it not is the question. And is all of those things? Well, what is it not? It fulfills everything, dude. It's unbelievable.
And I think this movie coming out now is actually a detriment to Jordan Peele's Us, because if we didn't have this movie to compare, because everything you said is what I would have said. Everything you just said about Parasite is what I would have said about Us. But putting those two together next to each other, like, I really like Us, but Parasite is, like, to me, it's on another level. Like, it is so well put together. It is impenetrable. I've seen it twice. I've spent hours thinking about this movie, like literally hours. And I find just thinking back on the movie, and especially seeing it the second time, I find new things. Every frame of this movie has something in it that either is setting up something that comes on later in the film, or is paying off something that came earlier in the film. It is masterful filmmaking. The cinematography is great. The score is amazing. And the acting is awesome. I mean, Bong Joon-ho is using actors that he's used before. Specifically, Song Kang-ho is the main guy who he's used in the past. So on Memories of Murder, and in I think he's in Oak Job, but I haven't seen it. But I mainly remember him from Memories of Murder and The Host, and I think he has a piece in Snowpiercer too. But yeah, so these performances are great. The children's performances are great. I guess we should probably say what this movie is about before we. I mean, we haven't said what the movie is about. So if you haven't heard of Parasite, it's a movie that is made by a South Korean writer-director, set in South Korea, and it is about a family who is a lower class family who is having a hard time finding jobs, and they get hooked up. One of the people in the family gets hooked up with a very, very upper class family CEO, richest of the rich in Seoul. His whole family ends up infiltrating the family as far as getting jobs with the family. So, and then the movie kind of goes on from there. And there's things that you don't want to know about the movie going into it, but that's kind of the basics of the movie. We need to get into some basic plot points, I think, to really understand a little bit more about this. But do you want to say anything about the film, non-spoilery? Because once I start getting into stuff, I want to kind of like start digging in. I want to make sure that people who haven't seen it have enough impetus to see it.
Well, I'll stress that in just a second, but I think I like the way that you called it impenetrable. I was going to say it's near perfect, if not perfect. And I think that this type of film will grow, and 10 years from now, it will be as masterful, if not more. It is just a sight. It is something you need to see in the theaters. One, because it's just spectacular looking. And I think subtitles are easier in the theater for some people because they're large and, so it is subtitled. And people who might be iffy about that need to get over it, because this is a film people need to see. And I would say it's definitely something you should see, and it's definitely something you should not know about any of it other than the general description that you just described going into it. Because first of all, you can't really know things without it ruining some aspect of the film. You just can't. And so it's a high alert for spoilers from this point on, because if you are listening to this podcast and you have not seen it, I cannot stress it. I mean, it's odd to be saying, please turn us off. You know, usually it's like, please listen to us, you know, please give us a review. But I'm saying to everybody who possibly could listen to it from this point on, you do not want to know anything about this movie. And I know that there are people out there who always say, oh, I don't care, it doesn't affect me. Well, it should, because you really need to experience this movie firsthand, right up front. You just need to not know about it. So from this point on, high alert for spoilers, because there's no way to talk about it without giving away stuff that is impressive to talk about. So please, please, please don't listen unless you've seen this film, because it's just that great.
Amen. Okay, so we're going to get into it because I am excited. We can talk about the symmetry, and a lot of movies do this, where you have the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie have the same scene. There's a symmetry from the first shot of the movie and the last shot of the movie, with the hanging of the socks on the fan grate. I thought that was really cool. And the biggest thing that I didn't even put this together until today, but like, I can't imagine, we're talking about the low class family, the Kims. There's like small things can be catastrophic to them, whereas the high class family is like pretty much the exact opposite. But the beginning of the movie starts with them not having Wi-Fi. They've got cell phones, but they don't have any cellular coverage with their cell phones, so they have to depend on Wi-Fi, and they can't get Wi-Fi in their house or in around their area. And that is preventing them from even getting these kind of like gig economy jobs, the folding of the pizza boxes and all that stuff. So that to me it sets the table for what is going to come later, and to help you understand that like they need these basic things to even be able to try to survive, to even be able to try to get some sort of like job that's not a lasting job, but a job that'll at least put a little bit of food on the table. Like, and it's literally like vending machine food on the table that they get from that box folding job. So it's that kind of sets the table for me. And we also get to see that they're in a sub basement. So it's like they're not only like the low, a low class where they're living in a lower area of Seoul. They're living below the ground, and they're having to watch people pee on the streets in front of them. I mean, that is another kind of like marker for where their station in life is at this point.
Well, visually and metaphorically, the bathroom sets the picture.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So when he's trying to find cell phone reception, the father go into the bathroom. And so he has to go into the bathroom. And then you realize that the toilet, which it struck me strange when I first saw it, but it really didn't dawn on me until later on in the film when they go back to their apartment, that the toilet is living higher than they are. It's above them.
Yeah.
And that in order for them to use the toilet, they have to crouch over and sit with their head and neck kind of closer to their knees, because the wall and the ceiling are so close to the toilet. And he has to, in order to achieve what we take for granted, he has to go to the bathroom where the toilet's higher than he is and try to find reception. And then he has to get up onto the toilet and finds this one little spot, which happens to be right above the toilet, where they can get reception to do a job, to make money, to feed themselves with potato chips and ho-hos, whatever they're eating at that point.
Yeah.
And it's striking because it just puts it in perspective immediately. Mm-hmm. Although it's sort of subconscious, it sort of seeps in there, no pun intended, because later on, there's a lot of seepage. But it just, when I was coming home from this film last night, or 2 nights ago, I think I saw it, I always try to say, it's like rehearsing lines. I try to say out loud what I might say on the podcast, or, what my thoughts are. And I cannot describe this film without saying I was lit up afterwards. We've talked about that before. We just are floating out of the theater because the film was so amazing. I don't remember getting into the car. I actually don't even really remember driving home, which sounds terrible, but I really don't, because all I was thinking about was this film, and I kept going, and I could not find words to describe how amazing this experience was. I couldn't put it into words. I just couldn't. It is far beyond lit up. We need a new term. You know, I vibrated on a different level when I left the theater. So once I started to break it down and think about it, which has been nonstop since I saw it. And I went to a friend's house, I was telling you, off podcast, to a dinner party last night. And I asked if they had seen this movie, and nobody had seen it. I was like, oh, man, because I just wish it was one person I need to talk to about this movie. And I knew the podcast was coming up, but I was like, I need to talk now about this. So it's amazing what starts to come back into your brain as you start to pick apart a movie in the best kind of way. And when I realized that the Toilet Bowl has a higher sanction than they do, I was like, wow, that is that is so brilliantly thought out that it's, and it might just be par for the course for sub apartments or basement apartments in Seoul. It might be just, where they live, but to actually have a picture window, which is actually a kind of beautiful window that you see in the opening that you were talking about, that you see at the end. And then you can't leave the window open because somebody's going to urinate near you because of drug problems in South Korea. But yet they decide to keep it open when they're fumigating because they can't afford to kill the bugs. Yep. And then there they are sitting in this pesticide-ridden house and just kind of dealing with it. And the father's just dealing with everybody else's coughing, but the father's just kind of like going with the flow with making those pizza boxes because there is no other choice.
Well, and that might be the same smell. I mean, I know that the smell is a big deal in this film, but that might be specifically what the kid smells, because it's within such the rich kid smells, because they're in such close proximity in time to when that happens. But I don't know.
Well, I actually think it's a smell that has integrated into their life because of where they've lived for such a long time. Sure. I don't necessarily think it's a specific thing. It's like staying in an attic and cleaning up your Christmas decorations one year. You come down and you smell like that. It's like baking chicken, and the chicken fat has a certain smell. It gets all over your clothes for the next couple of days. Fish, it's the same thing. When you live in a place where you need humidity and can't afford a humidifier, then that kind of musty, kind of moldy smell attaches. I had a friend in college. He had a hard time always cleaning his kitty litter. And finally I was like, dude, you got to bring women over here and they're going to smell that. And he goes, oh, so what? Blah, 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 blah. And I said, your clothes are going to smell like that. And sure enough, we went to a party once and his buddy turned to him and said, you smell like kitty litter, not the good, like before you put it in kind. It's like, I said, see, I told you. Wow. So those kind of smells seep in, but the smell is once again a metaphor for a class hierarchy situation. Definitely. Where I have to look down on you because you don't smell like I do because I'm well kept and you're not. And I don't necessarily fault the rich people for thinking that because they don't know any better. It leads to something devastating at the end of the film, but that's brilliant because such an insignificant thing floats all the way through the movie and becomes the most significant thing.
Yeah, love it.
Brilliant.
So speaking of insignificant things that become significant, the stone that's given to the son by his friend, I mean, that has, and even when he gets it, he even says like, that's so metaphorical. And he says that 3 times in the film, but that's the first time he says it.
Yes, he does.
And it is, I've listened to some interviews with Bong Joon-ho, and he's kind of like calling out the obvious, is saying like, yes, this is supposed to be metaphorical. And I get it. And it's funny that he says that it's metaphorical. But that could be seen as something like, I mean, I think they even said something like Philosopher's Stone or something like that. And I looked that up, and it is like something that's supposed to be a stone that it brings prosperity. They said that in the movie, that brings prosperity to your family and all those things. But the Philosopher's Stone specifically is like a stone that is supposed to have the ability to turn things that aren't valuable into things that are valuable, like metals. like basic metals, iron, whatever, and turn it into gold and then make it something that you can use. So alchemy, all that kind of fake stuff. So that makes sense in the context of this film, where they get this stone and then all of this good stuff starts to happen. In fact, the guy who brings them the stone also brings them the opportunity that gets them into this family's life, the rich family, and they're able to. That's the beginning, but their actions and their capabilities are what allow them to get to the point where they are, halfway through the movie, where they are all employed by this family in a cunning way. It's so well done, and they connect all these dots, and they're always. That's the other cool thing, is they're always just one step ahead of us. And you're like, what are you doing? Oh, okay. Why are you taking off your panties in the car? Oh, okay. All right. And it's all put together in such a way that is this kind of like puzzle box that we get to open up while we're watching it. And it's great. It's amazing. But the other thing that I see is that Bong doesn't patronize the audience, and he doesn't tell us that these people in this lower class are talentless, or that they're worth less than the rich family. And if anything else, it means that they're working to kind of game the system, quote unquote, as far as making up the documents for the son. The daughter makes up documents for the son, things like that. But their talent is real talent, and they haven't had the ability or the opportunity to apply that talent in a more standard way with a regular job. But they all have their talents, and they've had to work around this system that has, whether it's the system or whether it's where they are. I don't think they have necessarily like a caste system like India does, but I think there is a big deal about using the two names, Park and Kim, because those are two of the most standard names, or the most common names in South Korea. But yeah, I think that having the parallels between the two families, even the number of children and the ages of the age differences of the children is, I think, similar. At least you got an older sister, younger brother, father, mother. It's so lined up, and it's right there. All of the metaphors, all of the symbolism is right there to begin the movie, and then once they start kind of integrating with each other, we start seeing a little bit more. And you don't even really see, or at least I didn't really even see where it was going until after the sister gets kind of hired on. And yeah, I thought that it was really, really well done. Did you have a lot of like laugh? Did people laugh a lot? Were there comedic parts that people reacted positively towards in the movie, or was it all like really everybody was kind of closed up?
Well, people were definitely, they were on the edge, and people laughed, and also there was inappropriate laughter in places, including myself, where then you felt bad about laughing, and then you realized what you laughed about 20 minutes later after it came back up, and you were like, oh no, what is happening? Don't do that. So yeah, people laugh, definitely. But I do want to say one thing about what you were saying about a talented family. They are talented. And in any other circumstances, if they were able to use their talent legitimately, they would prosper. And until the daughter actually leaves the panties in the car, up till then, they really didn't do anything really that unethical. Yes, they made a certificate up, but the rich mother, the rich wife, says, I don't really care about certificates and stuff like that. I only care about the recommendation of that guy. Yep. And then the sister actually took a really good shine to the son as an art therapy teacher. So I think they had the best interest at heart. I mean, they were full of BS. He was like, is that a monkey? And she's like, it's a self-portrait. And he's like, brilliant. And the way that's played is so smart, because she can't see his expression full on. So, and then the fact that he waits that time to say the way that he says brilliant is just really smart, because you can't tell at that moment in time, you cannot tell that he is BSing her if that's what he's doing, because it actually sounds legitimate when he's like, brilliant. I thought it was a monkey, but now I see it's your son, and that's brilliant that I thought it was something else, because art is in the eye of the beholder, that kind of stuff. And until the father comes into place, and does what the father does, and then what the father does with the housekeeper, with the mother, their mother, until all of the original housekeeper, until all of that plays out, they're really just surviving. They're survivalist, and they're just doing what they can do, because even the friend says, don't worry about that. Fake the documentation, because he says, don't I need some kind of college degree to be a teacher or a tutor? And the guy's like, you don't have to do that. She just needs English, and you can speak English and you can teach English. You don't need any of that. So he has the skills to do it. He just doesn't have the documentation to prove it. So what they do until the father comes into place is all legit, but man, does it quickly turn into, wow, if this family could do something legit, they could run a whole corporation. They could run a whole island. They could run a whole world themselves. They could run a whole country themselves if they were given the legitimate means to do it.
Their legitimacy is based on who they know. And I think that's the key in that scene where she says like, oh, well, I don't really pay attention to the papers and to the, certifications, because if you get the thumbs up from her, she's at such a high level at such in class, like she's the richest housewife, then if she gives you the thumbs up, then everybody else will fall in line, and they'll be like, oh yeah, you're totally fine. You can have whatever job you want because she says that you're good. Or she says you're okay. It's kind of like a crock, it's like, it's not even like the paperwork that it's not like you need the paperwork. You're right. That is how a lot of things, happen. I've got a job that I don't need a degree for, but I love it, and it's fine. I've got a degree, but I don't need a degree. But it's still a great job. So there's jobs out there that you're right. You need to get your foot in the door, and then you prove yourself, and then you can do well.
Yeah, that's how we have systematic racism. That's how we have systematic nepotism. That's how we continue to do the same things over and over again. Because I'm going to give you a job before I give somebody else who has an applicant, because I know you, Josh. I know I've been around you for 6 years, at least up to this point. Why wouldn't I give it to somebody who I trusted? And because the friend recommends, and because the mother really is not doing her homework. I mean, she really doesn't. I'm not saying that she deserves to be taken advantage of.
It's because she's on pills. That's the first time we see her. She is passed out, like leaning on a table.
In the middle of the afternoon.
In the middle of the afternoon with her kids around.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Escapism for no reason. You have that beautiful house. You don't need to escape. Get a tent like the son does, sleep outside. You'll be fine. You don't need pills.
But what that does is it shows you that obviously money is not the key. Money is not the be all end all, and money is not the thing that's going to fill whatever that hole is inside of you, because she's got all of it. She's got the husband who's the CEO, and she's got 2 kids, and she's got a beautiful house, and she's got all that she would ever want. And the only thing that she's really passionate about, we find out later on, is drugs. So, I mean,
well, I'm not saying that she's trying to fill that God-shaped hole. There's no doubt about it. But I'm not advocating for drug use, but I'm saying that maybe it's just fun to feel good to her, and she's got no worries, so why not? That's an oversimplification, no doubt about it. But it's really such a simple fact of this movie, and it's such a cliche that it's kind of unimportant. It does bode to decision making, but she loves her husband. She's in love with her kids. She loves her life. So, but what I wanted to say that I lost track of because I started thinking about the movie, which is dangerous because then I start to get like lost and going brilliant, because that's all I can think of, is that you said that this movie, you didn't see where this movie was going until a certain point. But see, what's interesting about it is, first of all, everything. Second of all, you see where this movie's going, and you think as an audience member, you're secure in your position of what you feel about these people. And then boom, the doorbell rings on a rainy night and everything changes. And what's so amazing about those choices, screenwriting wise, is on paper, it seems like out of the blue that this thing would have happened. And we can talk about that later on, but really logically speaking, they explain exactly why it could happen and explains exactly why this place could exist.
Yep.
And you're like, whoa, that's not a left turn. That's a 360 degree, 180 degree left turn with a 90 degree angle. And you still don't know what direction you're supposed to be headed in after that happens. When you see that shopkeeper come back and go down the basement, you have no idea where this is going.
The shot where she's pushing the cabinet.
Amazing. Oh my God, it's amazing because you have no idea. Because you're laughing, because you're thinking, why is this, what, this woman's got diamonds or whatever. You don't know. And she's a little old lady. Like she's, you know, she's capable of making physical movement, but you're not expecting to see something like that. And did you notice, obviously you noticed the Christmas tree and the Merry Christmas banner that stretches between the wall and the thing. And then it stretches out when the cabinet is moved. Yeah. It's just really genius because it's a key. It's a neon light navigating where the audience should be focused on. And it should be focused on that cabinet being moved and that cabinet being moved back. And it's significant that cabinet needs to be moved. And when it's spread out like that, your eye cannot not catch it. It just can't catch it.
And what's in that cabinet?
It just cannot.
It's that prune juice, which she establishes earlier in the film. This is a perfect movie. They established the prune juice earlier in the movie where she goes down and gets the prune juice to calm everybody down. And then, you know, we see the cabinet again a second time. Obviously it opens up. And then by the end, that prune juice gets dropped and mixed in with the blood of the son. I mean, it's such a melding. I mean, that symbolism is like the prune juice and the blood is the mixture, the inevitable clashing of these two classes, of these two families. That there's always been that, man, we're getting right at the end. But okay, so there's always been this line, you know, he talks about crossing the line. The husband of the rich family talks about the driver not crossing the line. Well, that is the moment in which the line is obviously crossed because these families, their freight trains running towards each other, the upper class and the lower class families, and both families will be forever affected by this moment and by what will happen next. So it's such an, and that's just prune juice.
Here's why it's masterful. Here's why it's brilliant. And there's not a term in the English language that can describe how exhilarated I am about it, because it's not only a 3-part motif, okay, with the cabinet and the prune juice and how it's one thing one way, then a second thing during the flashback sequence, and then a third thing at the end of the film. It's one thing that is 3 separate things in a film. And you're like, wait, it not only comes back, but it comes back differently each time. And it's fermenting prune juice. Like, what made somebody's mind go there and think that? No, I need to ask you this before I forget. Is this screenplay based on anything, or is it an original screenplay?
Not that I know of. I know that the director Bong Joon-ho wrote it with his, I think it was like an assistant director from Okja, second unit director. First movie that this second unit director's ever written. His name is Han Jin-won. And so I don't know.
Okay, so it's not based on a different material. It's not based on a different short film. It's not based on a poem or something. Okay, here's why I'm saying this. Because there are milestones in my life with the Oscars that I actually feel like if certain things don't happen, I might lose my passion for the idea of giving out accolades. And I can firmly say my passion will be split open wide if this does not win original screenplay. There is nothing. They shouldn't even have a category. When the nominations are announced, they should say Academy Award winning film, Parasite, best original screenplay. They should just say it. They should not even nominate it. Like, can you imagine being a screenplay writer and being in this category with this film? Because not only is the film executed perfectly, but the screenplay, I often talk about reading the page versus what gets on the screen, or reading the play and then seeing what happens on stage. And it's 2 different things. We talked about that last week with the audience, the actor, and the screenplay or the script. You can't have one without the other. But sometimes when you read something and then it becomes a visual, you go, oh, I get it now. Or you read something and you go, oh, yeah, that wasn't quite what I was expecting it to be. It could have been so much more. This had to have read as perfectly as it came across because it's so etched out brilliantly that there's not a flaw in the screenplay. There's not a flaw. There's one little minor cliche thing that I think is a little like, okay, we'll give it that, but it's so insignificant that it just doesn't bother me. When the family later on in the film is going on a camping trip and they talk about the rain coming and it's raining the whole entire time, you know, as an audience member that the family's going to come back because of the rain, that they got flooded out. You do know that. I mean, it's just a given. And the Kim family should have thought of that. And so certainly would never want to interject anything into anybody's material, but it's just a little like minute pinhead size glitch that, I don't know, you saw it twice. So they might say something like, oh, who cares if they come back, or we'll be prepared if they come back. They could not have been as surprised about them coming back. Now, what makes it perfect again is that you're not expecting the doorbell to ring.
Yeah.
I was expecting the family to come back, but I wasn't expecting the doorbell to ring. And if the doorbell didn't ring and what happens after that, and the family came back, it would have been like, oh, here's that middle eighth of the movie where you're like, oh yeah, okay, let's just keep going with it. But it sideswipes that by ding dong. So brilliant.
Well, after the family leaves, after the rich family leaves, I guess we can call them by their names. After the Parks leave and the Kims are in their house, I noticed it the second time, and this is so I don't. It would be awesome if you noticed this the first time, but I didn't notice this until the second time. But when the mother and father are the Kims, the mother and father are laying on the couch. This is in the daytime. They're laying on the couch. In fact, the mother is laying in front of the father. And then the mother gets up and you see that the father's behind her. And you're like, oh, look, they're just kind of like chilling on the couch. And then they look out and they talk to their son, who is out in the yard reading a book. Now, later on that same night, when the parents come back, when everybody comes back, the mother and father the Parks lay in that same configuration with their son out in the yard, in a teepee, but out in the yard. And I'm just like, this is, the symmetry that he's employing, and the kind of trying to like show the audience or at least bring out the fact that like these are two families, these are two sets of human beings that are bonded together, and showing the sameness of them. It's so well done. I mean, that is something that just like lit me up when I saw it a couple nights ago again for the second time. I was like, this is, even in a scene like that, like you can have a scene like that, but, and there's a reason to have both of those scenes, but the fact that they're staged and blocked exactly the same, it means a lot. It means that he's paying attention to the most minute of details. Did you read anything about the ramdan, the noodle dish that she made, that the mother? Okay, so we're at the part of the movie where, she says, we're going to be home in 8 minutes. Start the ramdan. Start this, my son wants this noodle dish. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And, the Kim, the maid, she says like, what's ramdan? Well, I did a little bit of reading on this, and it's technically not called ramdan. It's something that the translator for the movie named ramdan, which is a mixture of, like they said in the movie, ramen and udon noodles. But it's basically like, imagine taking ramen, like the ramen that we're used to eating, and putting filet mignon on it. That's exactly what they did in this scene. So the mother wanted the Park mother of this little kid. The kid's been bugging her, like, I want ramen. And she's like, fine. Okay, he gets ramen. Fine. We'll make him ramen. But she says, we're such high class, like, I can't have my son, I'm so fancy that I can't have my son eat ramen, because ramen is for commoners. Therefore, take this really expensive meat and put it all, cook it up and put it on top.
Okay, here's why that's so brilliant. Because it's exactly the moment that the families come in conflict with each other. Mm-hmm. And the Kim family is ramen noodles, and the Park family is filet mignon.
Yeah, and but that scene right there,
and then the mother ends up eating it.
Exactly. The reason why the mother ends up eating it is because the kid doesn't want all that stupid, sirloin steak or whatever they put on there. He just wants the ramen, but she can't handle it. She can't handle her son eating commoner food, so she has to do it up like that. And guess what? She likes ramen too because she ate it all. She ate all of that really quickly and didn't even offer it to her daughter, who her daughter's ticked off at her. So she doesn't want to admit to herself that she likes ramen, and it just goes from there. But that's like an encapsulation of this whole movie, where she doesn't ever want to go below her station, and she doesn't want to allow anyone. Did you notice she also didn't offer any to the maid? To be like, I really don't, because she even said, I really don't want to eat this, but nobody else is eating it, so I guess I have to eat it. She even says, like, if you watch it again, she even says it does have, it's got sirloin in it, or it's got steak in it. So it's like, it's not specifically like you can't eat this because it's got meat in it that's too valuable for you to eat it. Therefore, I'll take one for the team and I'll eat it.
It's a good indication that the mother has lost her way when it comes to seeing things for what they are. I mean, obviously that's a given from moment one of watching the mother, but she just can't see things for what they are because she ends up eating the whole damn bowl.
Yep.
She doesn't offer anything to anybody,
Nope.
But in a way, it's the first semi-selfish act that she does, because everything she does up to that point, even though it's, she's got one hand stretched out, pushing it away, everything she's doing is supposedly for her family. The art therapy, because, and then how brilliant is it that the art therapy comes out? I don't want to change the subject, but I'm going to make this point. How brilliant is it that the kid really does need art therapy? It's not just a higher class mother thinking that her son needs to be sophisticated by getting art therapy. He needs it. He's traumatized by something that, let me tell you something, as a kid, if I was him, it traumatized me watching it as an adult. It would, and I do not want to think of that image.
It's that actor's eyes. That actor's eyes are, wow, striking.
You can't do. Well, it's got to be something that they did also. That's got to be something enhanced.
I don't know. I've noticed have you noticed with people, there are certain people where when they widen their eyelids, you can't, I don't even know if I can do this, but when they widen their eyelids, you can see all the way around their iris, like the colored part of their eye. There's white all the way around their eye. And there's a lot of, I don't think that's fairly rare, or maybe, I don't know. I haven't noticed that with most people, but most people, I think, when you widen your eyes, you still don't, like, there's still portions of your iris that are covered with your eyelids, but it just seems like that is a thing that it seems a little bit off. And that guy's eyes, like, were just bugging out, and when he was coming up the stairs.
Are you saying that you don't think anything that's a lighting effect or that's enhanced digitally somehow?
Well, no, I mean, maybe they adjust to the contrast on, yeah.
I need to believe that there's something there. Because just you widening your eyes, describing what I just saw or what you just described and I saw you. Now, I don't even like you doing it now because it's bringing back that image. That image is frightening. Yeah. It's frightening. And here's why it's so brilliant. And I guess we can talk about it in more detail because we've already talked about spoilers.
Oh, yeah.
The Park mother says to the Kim daughter that she needs an art therapist for her son, and then describes this incident that happened to her son on one of his birthdays 2 years ago, and that they always go out of town, which is also brilliant because that is why they're out of town.
Yep.
So brilliant. So then you see in a flashback, once you find out what's in the basement, that the son cannot stop thinking about his birthday cake. And so he goes downstairs and starts eating the birthday cake. And that right there to me shows a class difference too. Because if I did that in my middle class family as a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, not only would I not have a birthday, I probably wouldn't have birthday cakes for the next 5 or 6 years. Because you remember when you sat downstairs and ate your birthday cake? You can't do things like that. But yet the kid was obsessed by it and went downstairs to eat his cake, and the mother tells the daughter, the art therapist daughter, that he saw a ghost and he passed out. His eyes rolled back in his head and he passed out, and we need to get out of the house because it reminds him on his birthday, and this was his birth. Yeah, and that we need therapy because he's traumatized, and we're, of course we don't believe he saw a ghost. So there's something wrong psychologically with my son.
She also brings up the 15 minutes too. You need to go to the hospital within 15 minutes after a seizure due to medical reasons. And that comes back later in the movie. Oh, it's so tight. The film is so tight because she brings that up. That's why there's such a time constraint on the very end of the movie. That's why the dad really wants. Well, first of all, the Park dad is like, why aren't you getting up and driving me to the hospital with my son who just had another seizure because he saw a ghost again, or because he saw a traumatic thing again. But finally he's like, I need the keys because I need to get my son to the hospital because we have 15 minutes before. I don't even know if that's a thing, but that's the device in the movie. We have 15 minutes to get him to a hospital to stabilize him or something. I don't know. But still, all that being said, that was hinted at 45 minutes before it happened at the end of the movie. It's so cool. Let's talk about the guy who was actually in that bunker for, what was it, 4 years or something? So to begin with, they hinted at him as a character at the beginning of the movie, close to the beginning of the movie when they're eating at that cafeteria. They were like, oh, did you work as a driver before the tea shop closed? Before the tea cake shop closed? When they said that, the tea cake shop that they are referencing is that guy's tea cake shop. It's so cool. I didn't know, obviously I didn't pay attention, or I didn't like clock that the first time I watched it, but I knew from the, that he was a tea cake shop owner because that's why the creditors were coming after him, because he went bankrupt and he couldn't pay his loans because his tea cake shop didn't get off the ground. And so now he's got a bunch of people asking for money for him, and he's not able to. Well,
he borrowed money from a loan shark.
Oh, that's right.
He got money from a loan shark. Right?
You're right. Yeah. He borrowed money from a loan shark.
So that's why he probably could have gone bankrupt and not paid his creditors, because what are they going to do? Get blood from a stone? But he borrowed the money.
Yep.
So that's why his life is in jeopardy.
So he borrowed money from the loan shark. So therefore he can't get, he's going to get killed if he shows his face. So that totally makes sense. But just the fact that they referenced the tea cake shop at close to the beginning of the movie, and that comes back later as his character, I think it's awesome. It's so cool. And he also uses the scouting manuals and the Korean Scouting Association is, it's a real thing, but it's like our Boy Scouts. And so that's another parallel. The son, the Park son and the Kim son have both been in or are in scouting. And so that brings back the Morse code. And so that's why the original guy sends out Morse code all the time. And that's why it pays off later on when the kid is out in the teepee. But then that's also how they're able to communicate, how the Kims are able to communicate later on in the film. But I thought the other thing I noticed was that the first time that we see, when we're introduced to Mr. Park, the father, as he's walking up the stairs, the first time we see those lights light up in sequence, the bulb lights as he's walking up the stairs. So they established that from the beginning. It's so subtle that you wouldn't ever notice it. And then they give you a little bit of like when the lights are flickering later on that night, and she says, oh, the sensors are a little bit off. And he's like, oh yeah. But that is hinted at from the very beginning. First time you see that character, it is right there all the time. Everything is right in front of you the whole movie, and you don't know what to pay attention to because it all could be really important, or maybe it's not important.
Well, the things that you're paying attention to are not what you think they are.
Yes. And the fact that Bong Joon-ho is such a complete filmmaker, it makes you, the first time you watch him, I mean, from now on, I'm going to have to go back to his movies again, to his other movies. But when I watch another one of his movies, like, I'm going to be paying attention to everything. It's going to be like high alert, full time, never close your eyes type of a situation, because I know that he can pack a movie with so much content and so much nuance that everything is important. And it makes me appreciate that. I mean, movies come out every day. Billions of dollars are spent on movies, and a lot of them are probably not even that good. But every once in a while, you have someone who's so dedicated and so focused that something like this comes out, and it makes it worth the while to spend as much time as we do on watching movies and thinking about them and talking about them.
Well, it comes down to one factor. It comes down to a simple factor that you and I are attracted to good storytelling. We want to hear a story. That's what we grew up with. Not meaning you and I, just everybody. Once upon a time, we grew up with it. So you're just telling a story. But to tell a story with such minute details of lights that you think are just automatic because they're rich enough to have those turn on and turn off lights that, you know, like you do in Target, you open the milk case and the light comes on. And then when you shut it, same with automatic toilables, all this stuff. They're so rich that the lights turn on as he's walking up the stairs. Yep. It's such a minute detail of storytelling that it becomes so significant later on in so many different ways. He does it again, where it's one thing that's and that splits off into 5 or 6 different things because it's Morse code. It's being subservient. It's being a servant. It's being lower class. You're underneath the stairs. And that guy doesn't have to do what he does to turn those lights on with his head.
But he says respect.
Right, exactly. I'm underneath you in a bunker, and I still feel like I have to serve you, even though you don't know I exist. So how ingrained is that in their society? But it's all done by a light being turned on and off.
but he does, yeah, exactly. But also at the same time, I mean, yes, I mean the money. If his wife is to be believed, then the money that she makes off of that family provides food to him. So he does have respect for that for Mr. Park, and he's sincerely, at that moment when he says, you know, halfway through the movie when we meet him, he's sincerely respectful of Park and happy that he has the opportunity to live underneath them. But as the film goes on, his views change, and everyone's views change. I mean, that's kind of the point. That's the arc of this film. But we have to get that establishing attitude from him halfway through the film.
Okay, we go back to the doorbell ringing on a rainy day, and the ex-housekeeper, the Park family goes on a camping trip. It starts to rain, and it's really raining really hard. And the Kim family decides to all gather at the house and take advantage of the Park family being gone. So they get drunk and they pretty much destroy the house, and, you know, they have a party and food is everywhere. And then in the middle of this party, I'd say probably 10, 11 o'clock at night, it's really late at night because they establish that they've been there all day. Mm-hmm. And they establish very easily from the time they start drinking to the time that they're so drunk, time has elapsed. Oh, yeah. And because they don't go from being like, I hate when they do that in a movie too. You go from like drinking a couple shots to being completely intoxicated. There's a length of time in between. Then the doorbell rings.
But right before the doorbell rings is so great. So, and once again, seeing this movie multiple times really pays off. Like, I'm sure when I see it a third time, I'm going to find even more. But right before that doorbell rings, you notice, like, throughout that whole scene when the daughter is laying on the couch and everybody's talking and, you know, making fun of each other and all that stuff and bouncing back and forth, she's eating something. And it looks like she's eating beef jerky. But then, right, like the moment before the doorbell rings, she looks at the bag that she's getting the beef jerky out of, and she's like, "Dog treats? Those are the dog treats that the mom, that the Park mom told the maid, the Kim mom, to give to the smaller dog." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so good!" And she really, and everybody just
I noticed that,
like. Everybody just, like, you know, goes like starts laughing, going crazy, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And then at that exact moment is when you hear the doorbell, and then people, like, their demeanor, like the audience demeanor, because I was had a lot more of a sense of the people around me in the second showing than I went to, both showings of which were packed. But yeah, so I had a good sense of that, and it immediately switched from, you know, everybody's laughing, it's great, and it's like, within a second, it goes from that to the doorbell, and then it's just like dead silent, and you start feeling what's gonna happen, and the rain and all that stuff. I mean, it moves into that. So all right, so go on.
Well, the interesting part about that, psychologically speaking, is why did we not, as an audience member, think about it before it happened? And then when it happens, as an audience member, I went, of course that's going to happen. You can't do what you're doing and not get caught. When are you getting caught? Because be careful what you wish for. It's coming around. With every wish, there comes a thirst. Every cliche you could think of, you've got to be careful. Instant karma is going to get you. You take whatever term that makes you feel comfortable. It's coming back around. And as an audience member, you know that on some level. But the movie is so strikingly original that you can't think normal thoughts during it. You can only think what you're being given. And that's unusual for me in a theater. Normally I'm one step behind or one step above, in front of what's going on. And I usually can figure things out. And that's another thing I didn't spend any time doing. I didn't spend any time trying to figure it out because I was allowing it to figure itself out right in front of me as we were watching it. That never happens to me. That's because of the original screenplay, because it's all right there. I didn't have to do any kind of like figuring out. It's all right there. So the doorbell rings. It's the ex-housekeeper. And she says, please let me in. I forgot something. Well, here's where being human comes into play. This is why you kind of have sympathy for the Kim family, regardless of what happens before, during, or after this moment, because she does feel bad for her, because why would she let her in? Any other moment, maybe because they're entirely intoxicated, maybe because they think they're smarter than they really are, maybe because they've gotten away with so many things up to this point and they've been brilliant about it that they thought they could handle it, but obviously they couldn't, because not only should she have said, you need to come back when the Park family is back. I don't feel comfortable letting you in. I'm the new housekeeper. Go away. I'm sorry it's wet. I'm sorry you're old. And I'm sorry you're beat up. I'm sorry you're all bruised. I'm not letting you in. But she does let her in. And then she says, I forgot something. I need to get it. I was in a rush to get out. Calls on her heartstrings. You know, I was so pushed out as the housekeeper so quickly. You understand. You would feel the same way. And she lets her in. And then there's that great shot of them walking down the stairs to the basement. And then that shot of her pushing the cabinet. And as an audience member, you have no idea what you're feeling, because it's just not right. Something's not right. And you're thinking, we talked about this earlier, maybe I don't know what it is. Maybe she stashed cash. Who knows? And then the door opens, and here's what's brilliant about it, above everything else that we've already said. And it's one of the first times that it kind of happens. The reaction of Miss Kim is the same reaction that the audience is having. Like, there's a staircase going down. What the hell is this?
And she even says that. She's like, what? As she's walking down, she says, like, what is this? Where are we going? What is all this?
And then you discover that the ghost, the bug-eye guy, I'm believing he's enhanced digitally, because it's too creepy of an image for any human being to be able to do without lighting or CGI. I'm going to be convinced of that. I'm not looking at you because I'm afraid you're going to do it again. Then you discover that the housekeeper has been storing her husband downstairs because he had issues with money, like we talked about earlier, and the loan sharks will kill him if he is out on the street. So she has stored him down there. And there's a moment as an audience member where you go, okay, this is where this movie that made so much sense, because I'm accepting everything that's coming in, because I'm not expecting anything. I don't know where it's going. I have no idea. Starts to go, wait a second. There's a basement. The rich people don't know it. What? But then it's very logically explained that during the Korean War, all these very well-off people created these livable downstairs bunkers because you never knew what North Korea was going to do. And that the rich people built these into their houses, and they've been, because of South Korea being freed, and now there's no issue per se, although there's issues. But the threat of war is no longer. This is also interesting because it's been such a long time that somebody from South Korea sort of no longer feels that threat from North Korea, and rich people have forgotten, and real estate salespeople have forgotten that these bunkers even exist. Because why would you not see the realtors later on in the film showing this bunker if they knew it exists? It doesn't exist to them.
Well, it doesn't, because the guy who lived there designed it, and he was ashamed of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how the housekeeper knows about it, because
she worked for the designer,
which is another small detail that you think is so insignificant. And it branches off into 3 different ways again, because you see that's why the housekeeper has been working there that long, because she was adopted from the old owner of the house, the original owner of the house. So she knows all the secret crevices and doorways and, cupboards and all that other stuff in the house, but it becomes something other than that. And she never tells the new family that there's all this space down there. And here's what's interesting. Her husband was not in trouble when she got that job with the original owner. Okay. Yep. He became in trouble after the original owner died and the new owners took over. So she kept that quiet from them, even before her husband was in trouble. Then when her husband was in trouble, she moved him down there. So she never told them there was a whole nother basement down there. Never said a word. And it's significant because there was no reason to not tell them.
Yeah.
You wouldn't tell them because the husband was down there or she wanted to utilize that space. She specifically didn't tell them because she probably has some kind of like inner bias towards the new couple, because she, is the housekeeper of the old guy.
Well, and it might have been the wish of the designer for her not to, because if he was ashamed of it, then it would have been his wish to not let them know, and he wouldn't have told them. And then so he probably would have told her, don't tell them. And so she just kept that secret the whole time. But, it's interesting that you were talking about the threat of North Korea, because I do think that the South Koreans are very aware of the threat of North Korea and of nuclear weapons in North Korea. And the next scene kind of explicates that, because you have this, I thought that it was perfect in this film where we've seen a lot of like somebody points a gun at somebody else and is like, hey, you go over here and do that. Except in this film, a gun was not used. A cell phone was used. And the video that she took when all the rest of the family fell down, it was, I mean, he even says it's like a, the old maid's husband says, this is like a loaded gun, or it's like a missile launching trigger. It is, but in effect, it would have the same effect on that family as shooting them, probably. I mean, to a certain extent, ruining their family's capabilities to provide for themselves as a family and to keep the jobs that they're in right now. And all that was needed was a single 5-second video and the ability to send that video. And in fact, they even assuage any kind of fears of like, oh, well, they're not going to get cell coverage down there. And then they say like, well, yeah, the daughter says like, oh yeah, I've got cell coverage down here. So even that, like, it's not even like they could just overtake them and break the phone. It's like at any moment she could hit send and do that. And that's why later on in the movie, they're making them hold their hands up for some reason, and then they do the whole,
well, she's just, holding them hostage. And
exactly. And they do the whole like North Korean, she acts like the North Korean television, propaganda TV, commentators talking about how Kim Jong-un is so amazing and great and all that stuff. So I think that, they're definitely aware of that, and that this is a parallel of that Kim Jong-un has nuclear weapons and at any moment can dramatically affect their lives to the point of killing them. I mean, I would think that if he's going to launch any missiles at South Korea, it would probably be at Seoul, which is exactly where they're at.
Yeah, but then why is that not a benefit to buying that house? Yes, the original owner kept it a secret, but why is that not, even though it's a generation apart from being that much in fear of North Korea? Because if they were still that much in fear, a rich family would be like, well, I heard about these bunkers. Does the house have a bunker? What if something happens? So they are one step away from that being, that's what I meant. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, because it does exist. It affects you and I.
Sure.
But it's just, it's once again, what's that word you used once? Bifurcated, where it splits off into something, two separate things, even though it's one thing. Because I thought to myself on the way home, I was playing this game. Honestly, it's not that the theater I went to is about 20 minutes away on a good day and about 35 minutes away on a bad day. So I knew I had time to think a lot about it. And I was actually, kind of not going as fast as I probably should. That's the only conscious thing I remember about the ride home. Other than that, all I remember is trying to figure out where this movie is going to fall apart for me. And I kept challenging myself going, well, what about this? Nope, that works because of this, and this. What about that? This. It's not that I was nitpicking. It's not that I was trying to figure it out. I just was so elated and over the moon about this movie that it was almost like a challenge to try to find something wrong with it, because there's nothing wrong with it. And I thought, oh, wait, why didn't the housekeeper just send that video immediately? Because that would out that whole family. And then immediately I thought, nope, that would also out her, and she had her husband down there the whole entire time.
There you go.
So it's a lose-lose. But the family never dawns on the family. It's a complete threat to the family because they're not really thinking right at this point. They made a misstep by letting this a huge misstep by letting this lady, and they're being held by the you-know-whats, and it never dawns on them. But I was like, nope, that works too, because if she sends that video's down in the bunker, why would she be down in the bunker? Then the rich family would know, what's this bunker? Why does this exist? She would have to clean that whole bunker up.
Yep.
And then her husband would have nowhere else to go. And then it dawned on me, oh, she needs to put her husband back into the bunker because he can't go out into society because he's going to get killed because he... Oh
yeah.
Dude. I texted you Parasite ... Oh my frickin' God. Small G, not large G. And exclamation point. And as a believer, I am very careful about how I use terms around you because I don't want to put any tarnish on how I come across to your beliefs. No. So I'm like, I couldn't help myself. Oh my frickin' God.
Yeah.
Small G, exclamation point, because I could not. That was right after the credits started rolling, by the way. Immediately I picked up my phone and texted you. And I never do that. But I just can't get over how specific everything is utilized in this film. It's mind blowing. And it's because the original screenplay, taut is the best word ever. It's so tight and so specific that it's mind blowing to try to pull it apart, because you can't, because it's all right there.
I even tried to like poke holes in like, why did they have the sex scene in there? Like I didn't get the Parks are watching their kid out in his teepee, and then they kind of get into it, and he initiates the sex scene, and then I realized, I was like, oh, it's because it's their own kind of agreement, their own kind of a relationship agreement. You know, he gets her physically and she gets drugs. Like that is the first thing that she asks for. She's like, give me drugs. And I'm like, okay. I mean, that's his, okay, you give me this, I give you that. All right, we're good. I guess the quid pro quo of it.
Once again, it splits off into something else though, because it's the moment when he does the shot of the father underneath the table, which is so tense. Yeah. It's so unnerving.
So good.
It's so unnerving. It's like the worst game of hide and go seek you ever played as a child. And you have the best hiding space, but it's so obvious where you're hiding. It's so ridiculous how taut. That's the perfect word for it. It's so ridiculous how nerve-wracking it is. But it's the only moment, and you realize later on that the father feels this way, the Kim father feels this way. It's the moment that he realizes this is wrong. Everything I've done to this point is wrong. He has shamed his family by having them hide underneath a coffee table while two people less than a foot away are having some form of sexual relations, because there's a shot of the father and he's holding his hand over his face like he's shamed. And it's a humanizing moment where he goes, okay, this has gotten out of control, but this is the moment that is scarring for my kids for the rest of their life. Like, where did I go wrong? Why am I underneath a table next to my children listening to two people have sex a foot away? It's shameful.
Yeah.
And it's a very humanizing moment, because I semi felt sympathy for him, but at the same time, I'm like, dude, you put yourself into the position of being under the frickin' table to begin with. I can only feel so much other than ickiness that two people are doing what they're doing and you're a foot away. Other than that, but you do feel this sympathy for him that does a human being. It's also the moment that you realize that karma is kicked in, that it's going to take over from this point on. It is only going to get worse. And it's not like this is the worst moment. It's the beginning of the worst moments. And if that is the beginning of the worst moments, it's only downhill from this point on. And it literally only is. No pun intended with the flood at the end of the film.
Exactly, because that's the perfect way to go to the next scene, because they start at it seems like the highest point in Seoul and move down from there. And you get to really see the real estate that has to be traveled to go from where the Parks live to where the Kims live. And it is a constant downhill trajectory physically and geographically and elevation wise from the Parks house to the Kim's house. And the Parks, you even see the water running down the street there, the kind of like cobblestone street or whatever. And then you see it going into a drain. And that drain is the sewer drain. And then as they move down, all of that water that hits the Parks house drains literally into the Kim's house, and along with all the other sewage and all that other stuff.
Thus the comment about seepage earlier on in the podcast when they're on the toilet. Well, you know what I thought was interesting is, first of all, that sequence is filmed so brilliantly. There's something about staircases in movies that just work. It worked in The Joker. It works in The Exorcist. Their staircase means so much more than just the staircase. Obviously, they're on a downhill battle. But then there's that great shot where they come down the stairs and they kind of like pause for a split second. Then the father and daughter keep going. And the son, who is basically the person who created all of this, the father is responsible for allowing it to happen, but the son put it all into motion per se. And then you see that shot of all of those crisscrossing wires, of all of the electrical wires and telephone wires. And all. I mean, it looks like a spider web of electrical wires. And it's definitely a metaphor, visual metaphor, at least for me it was, with all of the tangle webs that they have woven are now on top of them. And there's nothing that they can do because their mother's back at the house. The mother is like dealing with all of this. There's still a bunch of crap underneath the table that all it takes is for one peanut to be noticed. And the park mother is going to say, what's all this junk underneath the table? Because they had to clean up in 8 minutes.
Yep.
It's just mind-bogglingly, I can't say that word, great filmmaking. It's just unbelievable because it's not spoon-fed, but it's right there. And all you have to do is open yourself to this storytelling and it'll all come rushing in. But you're open to it because the opening sequences of the movie allow you to just process things in a different way. So when you get to all these metaphors and all these visualizations and all this other stuff, it's right there. You don't even have to dig deep to say it's a tangle web they woven. It's right there. And it's not heavy-handed. It's so brilliant. It's just brilliant. I'm like envious for the first time ever of a film that I never think to myself, I wish I could have been in something, or I wish I could have created something. Well, look what they did. I could do that. I never think those thoughts. But this is one that I go, man, if I could ever even come close to a paragraph in a screenplay this great, I would die a happy person. I wouldn't even care if the screenplay was ever produced or it ever came to anything more than just a paragraph. If I could think of something so genius like this just once in my life, I wouldn't have to make money off it. I would go to my deathbed knowing I've created something unquestionably perfect, because this is what the screenplay is for me. It's perfection.
Wow. We haven't talked about the Indian iconography and relationship, I guess, in this film. The youngest son, the Park's young son, is, I mean, we see the little suction arrows right from the beginning, but he's infatuated with Indians and to some extent with scouting, but I think mostly with Indians. And then I also noticed that when they talked about the teepee, and they set up the teepee out there, and she says, like, is he going to be okay? Is it going to leak in there? And then the dad, Mr. Park says, oh no, we got it from America. It'll be fine. And I think that's Bong Joon-ho is kind of trying to put forward. That is the most literal translation of this film, is that there was a period of time before the Korean War where there wasn't really, I mean, it was empirical. It was whatever Japan had Korea, I guess, and then but after the Korean War, capitalism, worked its way into Korea, South Korea specifically. Capitalism worked its way into South Korea, and there has been a boom in economy there, and because of that, there has been a large amount of money generated by specific people and specific families in that country, and those people have prospered. But also, I think what Bong Joon-ho is trying to say is that as a part of that, there have been other strata of people who've actually gone lower in their station in life, or lower in class because of that, because it's kind of pulled their society to further extremes. And that's what I think is what he's going for in this film. But just that one line, like we got it from America, so it's okay. And that is, I mean, that's telling. It's a good way of showing that. I think, to me, I think capitalism is not necessarily all bad, but I can see how Bong looks at his country and may see what he would want changed. And instead of him, writing an essay or an opinion piece for a newspaper, he crafts this just perfectly placed and perfectly paced film to express his views on capitalism. I think it's really cool. And so I think that the Indian thing, maybe, I don't know if it's a dig at America, to say like how early Americans treated the Native Americans upon moving west and all that. I don't really know, but what I do know is that there's a reason why there is Indian iconography in this film, or Native American iconography in this film. Specifically, they call them Indians throughout the film. So that's why I'm using the word. But and then at the end, you have the Kim father and the Park father both wearing Indian headdresses, Native American headdresses, and having hatchets. And in that's also representative, I think, and iconic for the end of the film, because these guys have hatchets, but the guy from downstairs, the prisoner from downstairs, or the old maid's husband from downstairs, finally escapes, and he gets a knife. And so that's what they're up against. And I think that whole scene, him coming up, him struggling with the sun, and then him coming up the stairs with the Philosopher's Stone, it's just like it's just closing all of the doors that have been opened up throughout this film, and it's closing all the loops that have been started through this film. Using the stone that was given to the son to injure the son. It looks like he killed him. And also that's another thing that I noticed, is that usually in a film, when you have someone getting hit in the head, there's going to be some sort of camera movement with that to give the film, or to give that scene some energy or some dynamism, where somebody punches someone and the camera kind of like pans a little bit to give it kind of emotion, and give it not emotion, but to give it a motion to accentuate that punch or that whatever it is, smacking somebody in the head with a boulder. But in this film, there's a locked off shot, and the shot starts with nobody in the frame, and then the son runs up out of the stairs, and he's got the wire around his neck, and he ends up getting caught on something, and then he gets thrown up and he falls down, and then the other guy comes up with the stone and then just drops it on his head, and it's so like the camera never moves, and it looks so, I don't know, clinical and just raw. It's brutal, and there's no special filmmaking trick or tool that's being used, but I think that's the reason why it's brutal, because there's none of this, like, we're not ginning up a way to make it a dynamic scene, because just the fact of somebody getting hit in the freaking head with a huge boulder is enough to be brutal.
Which you don't see. You don't see the first hit.
You're right. But you see the second one, though.
You do. And it's interesting that it's a locked off shot because the audience needs to see that, because the audience needs to know that the son is really hurt, or dead. They need to know that. There's just no doubt about it. You know what I was thinking about when you were talking about the Native American aspect of this film? There are a lot of times that I've been in class, or I've been in workshops, or I've been in a study group about plays and theater and movies and, just analyzing things. And people will find things. I remember in high school, the teacher was talking about the fish imagery in Hamlet. I'm like, what? What is that even? What are we talking about? What does that mean? And sometimes it seems drummed up, and sometimes it seems like we've put all this significance to something that is just a fish dinner, even though there isn't a fish dinner in Hamlet. But I'm saying that it just seems like over analytical, and just, is that really what they meant? Is that really imagery there means this? With this film, it doesn't matter what you come up with. That's what's there. And it makes sense to the person watching it. So if you believe that it's some kind of form of statement about capitalism, because that's said twice in the film. She says something else about that came from America. I don't remember what it was, but she says that about the teepee, or the father says that about the teepee, but the mother says it somewhere in the beginning of the film. That came from America. It might be in reference to the teepee, to the art therapy teacher. I'm not sure. But she says that somewhere in the beginning of the film. Is it about capitalism? Sure. Is it about North Korea having capitalism, but only a certain person can have capitalism and nobody else can? I'm just saying that, side note, it's awfully interesting that he can watch movies, but nobody else can. It's just like, it's at its core wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. It's at its core wrong. You need to live by what you dictate. No pun intended. That pisses me off. I mean, the whole situation is bad, but that just pisses me off, that you get things because you want them, but you can't allow your country to have them. That's just ridiculous, amongst the genocide and the extermination of people because they don't suit your needs and all that other stuff. But
there's worse things than not letting people watch movies in North Korea.
But it's just mind blowing that that's part of it. Anyway, so is it about commercialization? Is it about a statement against America and how Americans treated Native Americans? Absolutely. Is it any of the things that you think it is? Absolutely it is. And you don't have to fish for it in this film. See what I did there? You don't have to. It's there because it's such a tight screenplay that your interpretation is based on what you've seen, not what you've interpreted. In other words, you might say there's a fish imagery in Hamlet, but that's because you interpreted it that way. The film is so well written that it's there. You just have to figure out what it means to you as a person, as an audience member. You just have to. So I saw all that stuff. That bumped out at me about the American. Oh yeah, of course it won't leak because it comes from America. Oh, it jutted right out at me. No matter how great we have it in our own country, this country still represents something of higher quality than we can get. It jumped right out at me. The irony of it didn't get wasted on me. The irony of them with hatchets and Native American headdresses, which is okay to call them Indian headdresses. One, because that's what they call it in the film. And two, that's what it seems like.
Yeah.
It's not a representation of the Native American culture.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the caricature appropriation of the culture, which is not an issue in the film, which is an issue.
No.
If you think about it. Because now we're learning that cultural appropriation is wrong and that we shouldn't do it, but yet these people do it anyway because they're so well off, they don't even care about issues.
Well, there's
like that,
but there's also a remove too, because we may be, I don't know, certain people may be more sensitive to it in the United States, but they may not be as sensitive to it because they're in a totally different country that has its own histories and all those things that we don't know about. But so same thing. So, I mean, that totally makes sense. I'm going to go like full Room 237 on this and start talking about ghosts and the relationship and the symbolism of ghosts. The fact that the park mother calls the man living in the bunker a ghost. She doesn't know him. She doesn't know what he is. But the fact that's what she calls the situation that her son was in by seeing that man. She said he saw a ghost. I think that is ultimately at the end of the movie, once he does come up from downstairs and once he does enact his vengeance on the family that killed his wife, that is the point in which the ghost becomes real. I think the ghost of the lower class, who they've been able to separate themselves from by that imaginary line that they keep talking about. They've been able to separate themselves from any kind of darkness or badness or grossness or dirtiness by having enough money to get away from those people or to insulate themselves from those people. But now they're confronted by those people in an immediate fashion and in overt fashion, to where they have to recognize that there is another class of people, and that they are real people that have issues, and that have issues that they have to be a part of and they have to deal with, and that have real repercussions. So that's the ghost becoming real, I think, for me. That man coming up from the stairs and making himself known out of vengeance.
Well, it's like anything. You push anything down farther and further than it should be, it will come eventually to the light. Yeah. And it will not come back to you the way that you're thinking it's coming back to you. It will come back to you in a way that you're not expecting it to come back.
Yeah, and he has at that point, he doesn't necessarily have any ill will against Mr. Park. Well, he doesn't at all, like throughout the rest of his life, which comprises of 15 seconds. But he doesn't have any ill will against Park. But the fact that, now we're getting to, like, I think the meat of the whole film, but the fact that he is in, that both of these families essentially are in a struggle to be able to be employed by the Park family, is causing multiple deaths and stabbings and killings. That's when I think that Mr. Kim, that the father, is able to kind of look up from it and see that even though these guys both these families are dedicated to serving the Park family and once again have no ill will against them, the Park family still does not recognize them as anywhere close to equal, but in some cases resents them and resents having to be around them, to the point where he's literally holding his nose to get the keys to go take his son to the hospital.
I liked how you described it as poking holes, trying to poke holes in something. It's not that I intentionally want to find the flaws in a film. It's that this movie is so well done that I want to try to figure out maybe where is the one strand or the one little string that's loose from the fabric, because I'm going to pull on it to see if it lets me pull it all the way through, or if it really is a strand that's just supposed to be hanging, and that's okay. Because I thought to myself on that strange drive home, okay, the Park father exaggerates that smell for such a long period of time that I thought it's a little bit exaggerated.
It's slow motion.
Well, it's slow motion, but it's also, he smells it and then he reacts to it and then he backs up and he's like, oh, and he puts his fingers to his nose. It's a very long reaction to something that should have just been quick if he was taking his son to the emergency room. Yes, it's slowed down and it is slow motion, but it is exaggerated to the point where I thought, would somebody be that concerned about somebody smelling bad if their son was needing to go to the hospital? It just didn't make any sense. But the answer is yes, because it needs to be over exaggerated so you understand that this man is so culturally dumb to somebody lower than him, meaning financially lower than him, that he doesn't even think about the needs of his son over the needs of his prejudice at that moment. And it's detrimental to his health, literally. And so I was like, no, you would need to exaggerate that moment. And that's probably why he has it in slow-mo, to get the fact that even in this most horrific situation, you're in shock. You don't know what you're really doing, but you go on autopilot to save your family, which is an admirable quality, but you still allow something like a smell of somebody to inhibit your function in life. It's devastating that somebody would take the time to look down on somebody's smell while they're trying to take care of their family. It's really a monumental moment in the film. And I realized not only is it not a thread hanging, it's not. It's woven in very, very, very deeply. Because, you know, you see that they talk about the smell between the couple. Mm-hmm. He actually reacts to the mother reacts later on. They all have a reaction to the smell. And the smell is something that exists. I'm sure of it. Not only is it not woven in perfectly, it's probably going to end up my favorite moment in the film because it's so exaggerated to make the point that this is so ingrained in his world that he doesn't even know that he shouldn't take the time to look down on somebody, literally nose down, literally, that he doesn't know you're not supposed to react that way in a tragic situation. It's so ingrained in his environment to look down and to snub his nose down that he just does it. It's just, dude, I can't use the word brilliant enough because it's so smartly done.
And I think that at that moment, that's the moment in which the Kim father decides that it's not, he's been trying to do what he thought was right for his family. But at this point, he can't, what's right for his family is to stick up for his family as a family and to show them that they are equals to, as far as humans are concerned, as far as being human are concerned, they are equals to the Park family. Now, obviously, you don't want to advocate stabbing anyone or killing anyone, but in that moment of passion and of anger and of, you know, losing his daughter and seeing that his daughter's death is based on them trying to serve the Parks, and then the Parks just completely disregarding them as humans, he says, you know, what's the equalizer is to show you, Mr. Park, that you're a human, therefore you're dead.
It's mind-blowing because underneath the table, he has to smell himself because they talk about that smell when they're laying on the couch and the three family members early on are underneath the table hiding from them. That's when Mr. Kim kind of grabs his clothing and tries to smell to see what he's smelling because even, they're only a foot away, but the father notices the smell. So it is ingrained in the audience up to that point that the father cannot take it anymore. Yeah. He cannot take the fact that I love how they debate that too. They're trying to rationalize that early on in the film. Maybe it's the pesticides, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And they're like, no, it's just woven into our world because we live in a sub basement. It is, our toilet bowl is raised above our clothing. So that smell exists. And that must be devastating because no matter what a family does, they're never going to get away from that ingrained prejudice towards them. Even if they make all the money in the world and get all the dry cleaning they can get and they get the fancy home, that isn't been ingrained in their psyche that they are less because not only do they have less, but they smell less and people notice it. And people notice it as a put down and as I'm better than him because yes, he's a little talky and yes, he's a little personal, although the father does engage him in that personal conversation. That kind of pissed me off when he said that. I was like, you engaged him in that conversation. Now you're accusing the Kim father wanting to know stuff about you. You started talking about yourself. Yeah, that's interesting. That's psychologically ass backwards that now you're finding fault in him because it has been ingrained in your psyche that these people are less than you are. And they are less. According to what you've been taught and raised and, I don't know if this family comes from money or I think they probably come from money. I think a switch must flick off or on, depending on how you look at it, when something like that would happen in life to where you're no longer thinking, I'm a human being, that's a human being, killing is wrong. All he's thinking is, I've got to stop this person from smelling me and thinking I'm bad because I smell different than he does, and it just triggers something.
It's the equalizer. It's the agency. He has the agency to do something, whereas he didn't feel like up to that point he did. I mean, and it is. You're right. It is the great. I think that we're hitting on the same thing. It is the great equalizer. It's like I can affect your family in the same way you've affected my family, in the same way that you, in a not even necessarily roundabout way, have made me lose my daughter. Now your kids will lose their father. And that's, I mean, it's horrific, but
I think you're smart by saying, yes, it's wrong to kill somebody. Yes, it's wrong to stab somebody, but you can understand as an audience member in this story why that father is justifiably doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
I personally, of course, think it's wrong,
Yeah.
but that click, and you can see it on that actor's eyes too. I mean, it's amazing. You can see it. He just goes from, it's like the shark's eyes rolling back in their head when they eat on something or when they chomp on something. You know, it's a defense mechanism, so nothing gets into their eyes, but at the same time, it's just like a biological function. And that's exactly what happens to that actor at that point. You know, it's amazing how many of these eyeball things are happening in this film too. Now, I don't want to focus on it anymore because I can't think of that image of that guy coming up the stairs. I cannot stress how much that's traumatizing to me.
So Bong Joon-ho has this kind of thing where he uses a top-down shot, kind of like a hanging techno crane shot, where it's directly top down, and at that exact moment, right after he kills Mr. Park, then that shot starts, and he's kind of walking through the party, and he's going down the stairs, and then you just see him kind of go out the door, and that's it. But you know, once we find out later on that he just kind of doubled back into the basement. The reason why he could double back into the basement, I noticed this the second time, was that there was a Mini Cooper that was parked halfway out of the garage. And when everybody's showing up for the party, the mother, Mrs. Park, she says to whoever it is who owns the Mini Cooper, she's like, oh yeah, just back it into the garage. Just make sure you don't hit the Land Rover, because they have like a Land Rover and an SUV or and a Mercedes. She's like, just make sure you don't hit the Land Rover. So this person backed up. You see them backing up their Mini Cooper and then stopping, so that the front of the Mini Cooper is like sticking out, so that the garage door can't close. Therefore, he can get back in to the inside of the house so that he can go downstairs. I mean, it is perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, well, I just have to say one thing, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm trying to make this statement blanketed under one statement to cover everything, but it can be covered in one statement. There's not a performance in this movie, and I even include the young boy, that is not Oscar nominatable. There's not one performance, not one. Everybody does something in this film that's a notch above just normal acting. I don't know how to describe it. I just kept thinking to myself, this is definitely getting nominated for Best Director. It's definitely winning Best Original Screenplay. I've already said my piece about that. And then director, picture, that kind of stuff. Will it win? I don't know. I'm not going to be surprised if
foreign film it should win, right? Don't you think?
Oh yeah, well that's a definite. Yeah, that's not even a discussion, to be honest with you. I mean, once again, why even nominate anybody? Why? This has like a 98% on Metacritic's.
Really?
98.
Wow.
That's a percentage of like 150 critics putting in their opinions, and then they do the average from 1 to 100. Usually it's like 68, 67, which is really good. 70, 80 is spectacular. This has 98.
Wow.
98. That's crazy. Yeah. 95. I beg your pardon. Metascore is 95. But definitely Best Director. I could actually see him winning, because what didn't he do that made this the most perfect theater going experience I've had, probably, I would even venture to say, in my life. I know that's a lot to say, but I'm trying to think what else. What else has had this effect on me where I cannot figure out what does not work, what doesn't work. But I will say this, the acting nomination is probably going to go to, I want to get his name right, Song Kang-ho. Is that how you say his name?
Yeah, I think they usually say their last name first, so it would be Song Kang-ho.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, but isn't it Song Kang-hai? Don't they say H-O as in H-I? It sounds like H-I.
I did not know that. I totally could
no.
be.
Don't tell. No. No, I'm not saying I know anything about. I can barely pronounce Americans' names, and the English language, and it's my first and only language. But the father, he is just unbelievable in this film. He is, for lack of a better term, a notch above everybody else. He has a significant character turn, so that might give him an advantage. But he should be nominated, and I will not be surprised if he wins because he has, dude, the moments after moments after moments, and he really is orchestrating everything from the moment the son gets in the door. And that whole great Reservoir Dogs scene where they're like acting out certain things.
But the son wrote that.
And they're doing the lines.
The son wrote all those lines.
Totally. But the way that the father's rehearsing it is the most important part. And when they go to the doorbell, him and the sister go to the doorbell, and she has to remember who she is, and she sings the song to remember who she is.
That's like a meme now. Like there's a whole like meme about that. Like people are, I don't know, doing that on Twitter or I don't know, Instagram or something.
I'm not surprised at all because it is one of those moments that seems so simple, but yet so significant. And the way that she pulls that off, she's brilliant too. They're all brilliant.
Yeah, they are all brilliant.
Older housekeeper, oh my God, they're just brilliant. But the father, Song Kang-ho, is the one that just probably, and here's why. I think people are going to be so like scatterbrained about who's going to be nominated that they're just going to go with him because they recognize him more than anybody else in the film. And they're just going to give it to him because everybody else deserves it too. And if he does win, he has got to say, this is because of everybody else in the film also. Not just that cliche that it takes a village to create a movie. None of that stuff. It's because of you, I am here. And it is true because without the way that the mother, who is great, Kim mother, oh my God, she's great how she switches. And that scene where they're going down to the basement, the look on her face, she's bewildered and she's befuddled and she cannot figure out what's going on. But at the same time, she's very kind of like stern about, what is this? I need to know what the next step is. But she's still kind of drunk.
And did you hear her say like, don't call me sis? Like she's at that point where she's like, no, I'm above you now. And now you are down here. And I'm looking down at you, because she's got to feel good to be like, I actually have a little bit of mojo, you know, I got a little bit going for me now, and I can look down on this person.
It's also about nicknames. Like they don't know each other. You don't know me. And for you to say something to familiarize yourself with me and to put me on the same level as you, you don't know me. We have not hung out. I've given you something by bringing you into this house. You're not, no. And that's before it all falls apart. That's before there's any kind of like.
When it all falls apart, Mrs. Kim, the mother, starts to say sis to the old housemaid, and the old housemaid's like, no, you can't do that.
The ex-maid, when she's on the couch with the phone in her hand and she's kind of straddling on her knees and she's kind of like stumbling back and forth, not stumbling, but like kind of swaying back and forth, like, I've got you, arms up, hands up.
Mm-hmm.
It is a different character. It's a different character there. That is not the same person who you see as the well-defined housekeeper who's all prim and proper. And then the old lady who's at the doorbell that you see through the camera, you know, that's all messed up in the face and her hair's all discombobulated. It's not the same woman. Once she has the upper hand, you see who she really is. That's brilliant acting, because at any given moment, you have to play your scene differently depending on what happened to your character with being the same person. It's complicated. I don't know how people do it. You're the same person, but you have, and once again, it's all of that branching off into different things. It's one thing that's really three things, because she's three different characters who's being played by the same person who is the same person as a character. I can't even understand what I just said. That's how mind-boggling it is. But you know what I mean? Like it could have, and same with her husband down in the basement. When he's doing that respect, and he's showing that he's still subservient, he seems like this humble, genuine guy who just has to be respectful to the person who keeps him alive. But then when you see him banging his head up against the wall later on and he's all bloody, and then you see him as the psychopath outside, but then you see him on the couch, it's the same person playing four different characters in one movie. It's crazy. It's crazy.
So her name is Lee Jong-yun, and so that's her. So I have a question.
That's her actress? That's her real name?
That's her real name, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But So as I was walking out of the first time I saw the movie, there were people who were sitting in front of me, and they, walked out, and I was walking behind them, and it was a group of like 3 people. And they were like, yeah, it was pretty good. And they were like, yeah, they could have ended it like 10 minutes, but they could have just ended it right after he stabbed that guy. And I was like, oh my gosh. So tell me what you feel about the end of the film where the Kim son sees the Morse code from his dad.
First of all, I'd like to celebrate the fact that I wasn't the person behind those people, because I might be on YouTube right now, because I would not understand that. My crowd, the crowd I was in, was devastated. Nobody moved. That's why I felt a little disrespectful pulling out my phone, but I couldn't stop from going, dude, oh my freaking God. I couldn't stop. I was the first person to pull out my phone. I felt really bad about that. But the lights had come up and the momentum had been broken, but nobody moved. And it was out of respect for the great storytelling that they just saw. For me personally, I love a good flashback. I love a good flash forward, which is really a flashback, which isn't really a flash forward. I love that. I love the fact that you're seeing a possibility of an ending. It reminded me of the 25th Hour, if you know that Spike Lee reference, that Spike Lee film, where you're seeing a possibility of a future when that should be the possibility of this future. And I love the fact that there's redemption in it. You need redemption because this family was surviving, and we've justified stabbing, and we've justified killing, and we've justified everything that they've done. But we've also talked about, be careful what you wish for. Karma will catch up with you. The light always rises. You cannot keep things down in the dark. It's just in our world, in our existence, meaning yours and I, it just doesn't happen. It always comes out. It always comes to the light. So they've done a lot of bad things. You need to have a redemptive moment, but you can't give them a redemptive moment because you just want to give it to them. First of all, the mother and son,
they're on probation,
get paroled. Yeah, they're on probation. They really didn't do it. I thought about that for a couple minutes too. I was like, well, wait a second. Somebody died. Well, no, they didn't murder them. They don't know where their father is. They legitimately don't know. You cannot have a film like this without an explanation of what could possibly have happened to the characters after that significant moment. You can't do it because everything is so etched out up to that point. It's not up to the audience members to think what happens after the story. The story needs an ending that the audience doesn't have to come up with. You read a good book and you wonder what those characters are still doing to this day. Stephen King's The Stand. The ending of that leaves it open to where, I wonder what I think they would be doing this, they would be doing that. Oh, they went back to the farm, they had the kid, blah, blah, blah. And you think about what those characters would be doing. But in this, because things are so etched out beautifully, you cannot not give the audience an ending. So to give them an ending that has redemption is kind of, I won't say hokey, but it's a necessity, but you can't do it where they haven't earned the redemption. And the son has to earn the redemption. He has to go and work and earn money legitimately in order to buy this house, to make this dream come true, where he has this reunion with his father and his mother on the yard. So he has to earn that redemption. And because he is the one who started this and yes, he faked documents to get one step up because he was at a lower point in his existence where no one was going to give him a break unless he faked it. But that was not the legitimate way you had to do it. You have to do it legitimately. So if he had gone to school and earned those certificates and then become a teacher, none of this would have happened. But because he faked it and because they fake it, all of these things happen. And you know what I thought about today? It's so great. The father goes to prison anyway.
Yeah.
He goes to prison anyway. He doesn't get caught by the law, but he's in prison.
Yep.
He is in prison. There's nothing he can do. He cannot come up. He is once again in the same position that he thought somebody else was. He looked down on somebody else for being in that position. He probably thought at some point this guy lived in the basement. This is terrible. He deserved what he got. He didn't financially do what he was supposed to be doing. So he deserves to be in that basement all this time. Well, the father at the end of the film deserves to be in prison, and he deserves to be in that bunker, and he is. Mm-hmm. So there's his redemption. The mother's redemption is knowing that her child has lost their life because of her, because the mother goes along with it too. She no longer has her daughter. And I'm sure it has something to do with when you have kids, it's great that they're both boys. It's great that they're both girls, but to have one boy and to have one girl, it's kind of complete. And, you know, everybody says, oh, yes, I'd like a healthy baby. I don't care if it's a boy or a girl, but, you know, have a boy, you want a girl. So they had a boy and a girl. Well, they no longer have a boy and a girl. And that scene where they're looking at her memorial is devastating. And yet again, another acting Oscar nominatable moment in this film. The mother is brilliant in that. The mother's brilliant in the courtroom scene, which is brief. When you go back and watch that scene again, watch her face. It's devastating. You know that she is feeling the guilt and the weight of what she has done. You can see it. She doesn't say a word, and she is not the focus in that shot either, but she spoke volumes. Oh my God, she spoke volumes. Ooh. Just a moment like that on screen I would kill for. So without the redemption, the audience would walk away feeling unsatisfied on some level. So I don't know what it is with audiences today that a film has to be a certain length, or they feel like it has to be a certain length and they can't stand it past a certain length, and that 3-hour films are unheard of, and the length of time, or the I would like to believe that I could innocently and open-mindedly ask those people in front of you, what was it about the ending that took too long that you needed it to be shortened? I know I couldn't have. That's why you were put in that situation and not me, because you could keep your mouth shut. I couldn't. But I would want to know what was it that didn't satisfy you? Because honestly, truthfully, without that ending, and it's only the possibility of that ending, it didn't happen. It's the possibility that he has to do what he has to do and get to where he's at to have that ending, which I call the 25th hour. In order to do that, he has to work for it in a legitimate manner. So for me personally, how could it not have ended like that? How could he have not told you what could be if you do this? Because what could be would have been different if you hadn't done that in the beginning of the film. Dude, this movie is everything everybody said it was.
Yeah.
Like you hear about it, Cannes Film Festival, or you hear about it, 100% of Rotten Tomatoes or whatever it is, 95 Metascore, people are raving, people I know who love it, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, really? You know, there's something cynical about me that goes, or skeptical is a better word for me, that I go, really can't be that great. It can't really, it's not that great. I didn't have that thought going into the film, but I sure came out of that movie going, it's as great, if not greater, than what people are saying. It should be, we should have parades and celebrate this movie. Like for real. I know that sounds stupid, but I'm not kidding. This movie, and it's sad and sinful that people are not going to see this movie because of subtitles. Yeah. And if they dub this movie, it's even worse. But I'll tell you this, side note, between you and I and everybody else listening, I hope they do.
They'll have subtitles.
Do the voiceovers.
Yeah, they'll have subtitles
right.
in the
I'm
DVDs
saying,
and like on Netflix or whatever. You'll be able to listen to it with subtitles.
Yeah, but you know when they dub an American voiceover onto films.
Yeah.
The only reason why I think that's okay is because the movie's so brilliant that I want everybody to have a go at it. And people have this thing about reading words while they're watching a movie. I'm the worst reader in the world. It's not that hard to do. You just have to learn. You know, you do it when you're 5 and don't even think twice about it because that's just what you do. It does not take anything away from this film that you have to read it. Nothing. But I want people to experience this movie. So however it gets out there, it needs to get out there. And if it's the reason why it doesn't win Best Picture, it's ridiculous. And I know it's early on, it's early November, and it's early to say it's going to win, but it should win. I can't imagine
a better film this year.
I wouldn't even say better. I just can't imagine something that will captivate me like this film has captivated me. I can't imagine it. I hardly ever want to see a movie again until it's time for me to see it again, if that makes sense. I texted you after you texted me back the next day about my first statement. You were like, right? And you were like, I'm seeing it again. And I was like, I can't wait to see it again. I literally cannot wait to see this movie again. Will I get a chance to see it in the movie theater? I don't know. It's all going to explode in the next 2 months with going to the movies. But I usually have a film where I can't wait to see it again, and I resist going and seeing it in a movie theater because I have so much else I need to see or want to see. I might trump that rule this year and might just go see this again.
Well, and I think it comes down to like, what better experience are you going to have at the movie theater? Like, what other movie are you going to see in the movie theater that's a better experience than this movie?
I hope that we're shown something different. I hope that we're proven wrong with that. I seriously doubt it. I cannot imagine. And if something can go and excite me the way that this has and go above this, I'll explode. I'll have a full-blown scanner moment where my mind is just going to blow, like literally physically blow up, because I can't imagine, at least this year. And I know we have The Irishman. I know we have A Marriage Story. I know we have a lot of great stuff coming, but this is nothing like anything else before it. And I will venture to say in this year, nothing after it. So we'll see, but I don't know.
Good luck, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, I know, right? Right. Who? I'm sorry, who was that? Never heard of him.
All right. Well, that's how
you got to edit that out.
All right. So you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer. And you can tweet us at actorengineer. And if you will, please give us a review on iTunes, and 5 stars, of course. And that will help us out to get out to more people. And we will see you next time.